And good evening, everybody. I'm just going to share with you my slides that I've created for this evening, because we're going to be talking about how to stay healthy, even though we're not quite locked down yet, but we are slowly coming out of lockdown, but we are still very much home-centric, spending a lot more time at home with very disrupted routines. So you've been introduced to who I am, and I'm going to talk to you now for about 20-30 minutes, and then we're going to have time for questions as well at the end. So I'm going to just start with a quote from the pages of the World Health Organization. This has been lifted today, and they say eating a healthy diet is very important during COVID-19 pandemic, because what we eat and drink affects our body's ability to prevent, to fight, and our recovery from infections. So that's all infections, but obviously particularly important now at time of this pandemic. And we can't really control, I mean, we're washing our hands and we're socially distancing, but in terms of kind of 100% protection, we can't be sure we're not going to get COVID-19 at some point. But what we can do is something called lifestyle interventions. So these are the things that we have control over, that if we operate in the right way, can make our immune systems more resilient to catching a virus in the first place, and can help balance how the immune system responds to that infection. So there are lots of nutrients that are really vital for the immune system. There's a whole host of vitamins and minerals. I've listed here the specific ones. But really what you need to understand is that if your diet is wide and varied, with lots of different plant foods and different types of fruits and vegetables, different types of proteins, then you will be getting a full range of all these vital nutrients. So omega-3 fatty acids here on the list, this refers to those super fats you sometimes hear referred to, which are the very healthy fats that we get from oily fish like salmon and mackerel, sardines and herring, and also from nuts like walnuts, and seeds like flax seeds and chia seeds. So the first point that I want to make you all aware of this evening is how important it is to eat a rainbow. And when I say a rainbow, what I mean by that is I mean all the different colored foods that you might put on your plate. So a wide range of colors, and that's a nice illustration there, that rainbow of fruit and vegetables that shows you all the different colors that are out there. So by eating colorful foods, you're going to be eating lots of fruits and vegetables, and this is where we get vitamin C from. Vitamin C is absolutely vital to support the immune system. I think we all know when we get coughs and colds, many of us reach for an extra boost of vitamin C. But beyond vitamin C, the colors themselves in fruits and vegetables are powerful plant chemicals that themselves can have a very antiviral effect. And actually a diet that's rich in a wide variety of these colors can prevent cough and cold viruses by up to 30%. And there's another compound in fruits and vegetables that's gaining quite a lot of interest at the moment, and it's called quercetin. It's one of these antioxidants, one of these chemicals in the colors of fruits and vegetables, particularly abundant in apples, in onions, in blueberries, in herbs like oregano. And this quercetin has actually been shown in studies to have had a very useful effect in combating the SARS virus some time ago. And they've actually been doing studies in China at the moment using quercetin to help reduce the inflammation in the respiratory tract of people with COVID-19. So in order to get lots of quercetin, again, it's lots of fruits and vegetables. Another thing fruits and vegetables are very rich in, particularly the sulphurous fruits and vegetables. So this is garlic, this is onions and leeks, the family, the sulphurous family, because sulphur is a primary nutrient to feed the liver, which helps detoxify and support the immune system in the body. And so eating a rainbow means lots of fruits and vegetables, but there are also lots of colors. If you think about beans and pulses, you think about red kidney beans, green lentils, beluga lentils, pui lentils, red lentils, all the different colors in beans and pulses, yellow corn, grains. All these different plant foods are all a very good source of fiber as well. So if we just think about eating a rainbow and getting a rainbow on our plate, we're going to be targeting all these different types of nutrients. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with the term microbiome. What we mean by microbiome is your healthy bacteria or your gut garden. So what we know is that 70% of the immune system actually exists as cells inside gastrointestinal tract, in your guts. So if your guts are healthy, if your digestive system is very healthy, this will impact the immune system, make the immune system very healthy. And one of the key components of keeping your digestive system healthy is nourishing these microbiomes, or these microbes, these friendly bacteria that I think if we can't watch a yogurt advert nowadays without understanding about good and friendly bacteria. And that's a probiotic. So we see sometimes supplements that are probiotics, but also there are foods that themselves are probiotics. The probiotics are the actual friendly bacteria. When we eat foods like yogurt or even sauerkraut or Asian foods like miso or kimchi, these foods are rich in friendly bacteria. They're fermented and they can help populate the gut with the friendly bacteria. And when we eat lots of food that is rich in fibre, this fibre acts as the food for the bacteria. So the more fibre and fibre-rich foods we eat, the more food we're giving our healthy bacteria, and the healthier our bacteria is, the healthier the immune system and our body. And I've written a study here that's just come out recently of China, that actually understanding that having a less healthy diversity of bacteria in the gut could actually mean that you have a more severe effect from COVID-19. So the research is starting to show us just how important it is to feed these tiny helpful bacteria in our bodies. So having lots of whole foods. So whole foods means brown rice as opposed to white rice. It means brown flour instead of white flour. And it means having less processed foods, foods that have been through less processing, foods that have a smaller list of ingredients if you're buying things that are ready-made from the shops, like biscuits or cakes. So when we eat whole foods, we're actually increasing the amount of nutrients that are available to us in our food. We're getting more fiber when we eat whole grain rice rather than white rice. Or we're getting more minerals like zinc and iron that are so important for the immune system when we're eating brown flour instead of white flour. And when we eat food, we're using lots of vitamins to help break that food down to turn it into energy that the body can use. And when foods are processed and they contain less nutrients to begin with, they start using up stores of things like vitamin C and some of those powerful B vitamins that support the immune system. So when we eat whole foods, we're actually providing the body with the substances that it needs to turn that food into energy. And again, in the literature, we're seeing that people who have a more whole food diet with less amount of processed foods in the diet tend to have better mental well-being, which is really important during these very trying times when we're all very stressed and worried about this pandemic. When we reduce processed foods in the diet, we're also reducing sugary and sweetened foods in the diet. And there was a study, it was done back in the 70s, but it still holds really strong sway today, that showed that sugar and sweetened foods actually paralyzes your immune-busting white blood cells for up to 12 hours. So if you're having a sugar-sweetened cereal for breakfast, you're snacking on biscuits, maybe a chocolate bar or a piece of cake sort of throughout the day, you're very gently and gradually, constantly suppressing your immune cells. So the key message is whole foods and less processed. And generally what we're trying to do is promote an anti-inflammatory state. So COVID-19 is an inflammatory respiratory disorder. So if we can bring more anti-inflammatory foods into the diet, then hopefully we will have a less severe response to COVID. And we can have an anti-inflammatory approach by increasing those healthy oils, the omega-3 super fats. So things like oily fish, I mentioned, sardines, mackerel, trout, fresh tuna, herring. Those are all oily fish, but also nuts and seeds. They're all a good source of omega-3, and of course the oils that we make from nuts and seeds. And certain foods have a pro-inflammatory effect. They cause inflammation in the body, and this tends to come from the saturated fats. So by that I mean fat that's solid at room temperature, so things like butter and cheese, but then also the kind of the white rind that we might see around a lamb chop or something. So by limiting those saturated fats, again, we're pushing our body towards anti-inflammatory. Sugar and sweetened foods, again, pro-inflammatory. So by limiting them, we're bringing down inflammation. So another reason for lots of coloured fruit and vegetables is that the vitamins that they contain, like vitamin C, is a powerful anti-inflammatory, but also the colours. The colours, again, these plant chemical colours are also antioxidant and very anti-inflammatory. And if we eat lots of these plant foods, with lots of fibre, then we're feeding our healthy bacteria, and our healthy bacteria also encourage a state of reduced inflammation in the body. But it's not just about what we eat. We can also create inflammation and inflammatory processes in the way that we cook. So we have to be mindful about, sorry, dog. We have to be mindful about not deep frying foods or cooking on very high temperatures, because that can damage fats, and damaged fats can have an inflammatory effect on the body. So thinking about maybe steaming or poaching fish or chicken, thinking about baking and roasting, but keeping that temperature controlled to about 180 degrees so we don't spoil any of the fats, and trying to avoid the sort of deep frying, deep boils. So there are some specific foods that we can include, but no food is going to actually prevent or treat COVID-19. But the foods that I've listed here, I've chosen because there is a body of medical literature that has investigated these foods and their effect on viruses and cold and flu viruses generally. I'm really sorry. So the herbs like peppermint, oregano, sage, spices like turmeric and ginger. You're probably familiar with turmeric as being quite synonymous now with being a superfood or a very healthy anti-inflammatory food. So you can put it into curries, put it into stews, some people even juice it. Ginger has a particularly anti-inflammatory effect on the respiratory tract, which can be really helpful at this time when we're battling a flu virus. I mentioned garlic being very high in sulphur, but also specifically garlic. Something called allicin in garlic is particularly potent for combating the viruses that cause respiratory infections. And I guess while we're socially distancing, we can just be eating loads of garlic because nobody's standing close enough to see just how much we're smelling of garlic. Mushrooms, they also contain a substance called beta-glucan, which they're actually investigating now in the literature for its powerful immune-supporting effects. So you can have them raw, you can put them in stews, you can put them in stir-fries. Green tea has been shown in studies to be very beneficial against catching a flu virus in the first instance. So it can really protect you from actually catching COVID-19 to begin with. And I think we're all quite familiar with the idea of putting honey into a herbal tea, or maybe mixing honey with ginger and lemon if we get a cough or a sore throat. But actually, honey itself has got antiviral properties as well as antibacterial properties, and it can also have an analgesic effect. It can also help soothe the sore throat if it's painful, if you do get COVID-19. So in terms of kind of maximizing nutrition and what we can do at home and in the kitchen, like I said, just think rainbow. Make sure you're getting a rainbow. If it's not on your plate every day, just make sure you're trying to get a range of colors in throughout the day and certainly across the week. It doesn't matter if food is fresh, if it's frozen, if it's canned, if it's dried, just as long as there's a nice variety. And one way to do that is to maybe think about trying a new plant food every week. So it could be a herb, it could be a grain, it could be a fruit or a vegetable. And when we increase the variety, we're doing so much benefit to our healthy bacteria that's really going to have a long-lasting effect on our own immune systems. If you're getting a bit bored of recipes or you're looking for new ways to jazz up vegetables, you could try spiralizing. You could try grating for salads or even barbecuing. Peppers, courgettes, aubergines all work beautifully on the barbecue. And then think about adding fresh herbs either to a salad. Mint works really well, so does basil, or maybe even into dressings like tarragon can work really nice, sort of blitzed into a dressing, and make the same salad taste different and bring different immune supporting benefits. So the leafy greens are a really, really, really potent, nutritious family of vegetables. But if you're not hugely keen on them, you can't get the kids to eat them, maybe just chop them very finely because they sort of wilt into nothing, and you can get them into soups and you can get them into stews quite easily. Nobody knows they're there, but the nutrients remain robust. Another way to sort of increase colours and variety, if you're making mashed potato, consider using a different root vegetable instead, maybe a sweet potato, a butternut squash, a carrot or swede. Those kind of orange colours are very rich in something called beta carotene. And beta carotene is converted by the body into vitamin A, which directly supports the respiratory system. If, like me, you're kind of backwards and forwards to the fridge quite a lot and you're looking for something healthy to eat, I find that a tin of beans, just kind of blitzed up with a zhuzh, can make a really nice dip when combined with a bit of yogurt or soy yogurt, or a tin of tuna, or a tin of salmon, or a tin of mackerel, and gives you another nice topping for sandwiches, something to dip crudités into, or to eat on crackers when you're looking for a healthy snack. And think about texture and crunch when you're making stir fries, when you're making salads. Kind of the same old salad can take on different flavor with a few toasted seeds. Sesame works really well in coleslaw, but pumpkin seeds, very good source of zinc that can really be very immune busting as well. So if you're doing lots of baking, like many of us are, and at the moment we seem to have a real lack of flour around, consider using ground almonds or ground walnuts, or even adding tahini or beans in baking. So there are lots of recipes out there where people are using sweet potato to make delicious brownies, or they're using a tin of black beans combined to make a chocolate cake. And when we put these extra protein foods into our baking and increase the protein content, we're actually reducing the sugar content. So we're actually reducing the effect on paralyzing those white blood cells and getting lots of extra nutrients as well. If you're someone who does like to snack, a good way to kind of build a decent and nutritious snack is to think protein and produce. So that could be something like yogurt and an apple. It could be something like nuts and dried fruit. It could be hummus and carrot sticks. So protein and produce. We've got more time at home, so if you do find yourself with more time, it's quite a nice idea to think about batch cooking. When you make make double a meal one evening and freeze half of it, it just means that later on in the week or the following week, if you're feeling tired, you're less likely to reach for one of those kind of ready meals or something less healthy, and you'll have a ready-made, delicious home-cooked meal. If you're menu planning before you do your online weekly shop, you'll find that you can save money and actually save food as well by planning what you're going to cook for the week. I know seem to have a bigger shopping order going on, with more people in the house eating 3 meals a day. And if you order more veggies, don't let them go off, don't think about chucking them, just boil them all up into a soup, blitz it, freeze it, or even into a stock that can be used later in something like a risotto or casserole or something. And if you're someone who's kind of snacking too much and you're looking for ways to maybe cut down because it's difficult being homebound all the time, we do tend to be kind of gravitating to the fridge quite a lot. Try sticking just to 3 meals, because it's been shown that this is really the healthiest way to eat. If we can rest our digestive system between meals. And it can also help balance your waistline. So maybe consider also an overnight fast. And what we mean is if your dinner is finished by 8 p.m., then you don't have breakfast till 8 a.m. the next day. You're allowed to have herbal teas and water because it's just water. But if you allow your body that 12 hours reset, it can actually be very beneficial on the healthy bacteria, and it can also be very good for your waistline as well. But do drink plenty of water. Sometimes we mistake thirst for hunger, and we find ourselves in front of the fridge, maybe relishing for something, not quite sure what, and actually we're just thirsty and we need a good glass of water. So do remember to drink as well. So I'm talking about lifestyle interventions. So yes, diet, but there are other lifestyle factors as well. And exercise has a huge number of benefits, far too many to list here, but specifically reducing blood pressure and our risk of infection. And exercising regularly can help prevent obesity and also type 2 diabetes, which actually have shown to be an increased risk factor for a worse COVID-19. Exercise has an anti-inflammatory effect on our immune system, and it also works as an amazing mood enhancer and a stress buster, which is particularly important at this time of sort of heightened anxiety. So when we're talking about exercising at home, it could be any number of things. We're all encouraged to get out and get some fresh air and exercise, but some people may be shielding and maybe at home more, but we want to try and think about the different types of exercise and mixing it up a bit. So there's the cardiovascular endurance exercise. It could be something like cycling outside or jogging outside, but it could also be something like just skipping with a skipping rope in the garden, or if you haven't got a garden, just doing maybe a Zumba class online. The resistance work is that builds strength and is particularly good for our bones. So my daughter and I, instead of using weights, we've been doing our exercise videos, we've been using tins of baked beans. So the TheraBands, those are the stretchy bands that you can buy quite easily on Amazon. But also things like yoga classes online are a good way for resistance and also for flexibility. There are lots of classes offering things like Tai Chi, Pilates, yoga, things like that that can help and be really useful to do at home. And if your excuse is that you haven't got enough time to exercise, then think about high intensity interval training or HIIT. Because I don't know if anybody saw the Michael Mosley Truth About Exercise video, but he demonstrated quite clearly that a few minutes of HIIT exercise a day, up to 6 minutes, is as beneficial as going for a run for 30 minutes. So this is when, for example, if you're going to do HIIT skipping, you would just skip with your skipping rope really, really 100% with all your energy for about 40 seconds, rest for 20 seconds, and then repeat that 3 or 4 times. But the most important thing with exercise, if you're not used to it, start gently. You don't want to injure yourself, so build up slowly. The most important thing is just keep going. The NHS is recommending 30 minutes 3 to 5 times a week, but I think that actually having a little bit of exercise every day is really beneficial at the moment. So we're all under more stress at the moment, and this increased anxiety and stress, whether it's stress of homeschooling children and getting extra jobs done, whether it's just stress of worrying about our health, can sometimes lead us into comfort eating. We get a sense, we get a dopamine hit in our brains when we eat sugary foods. So that's why you might find yourself kind of craving more sugary foods. And stress also uses up really valuable nutrients. It's a massive drain on our vitamin C reserves. It can increase blood pressure, and it can also, if it goes on over a long period of time, it can actually suppress the immune system. And it could also lead to depression, which again can affect our immunity. So we need to think about ways that we can tackle stress, to be mindful of stress. So exercise, sleep, meditation, and mindfulness can all help. But meditation, mindfulness doesn't have to be something very formal. There are lots of apps out there if you want to have a go at meditating. But it could be something very simple, like just sitting in the garden listening to the birds sing, or sitting by a window listening to the birds sing, or just enjoying a bunch of flowers, gardening, time spent in nature, or other ways to reduce our stress. So if you can walk, Highgate Wood's particularly beautiful at the moment, and try and maintain a positive outlook. Sometimes we can recognize that we're stressed, but that stress, if we have a positive attitude towards it, is much less detrimental to our immune systems. And there's a lot of people at the moment who are complaining of really over vivid, stimulating dreams that it's affecting their sleep. And I think this is sort of coming from a sort of a deep-rooted stress that we may not be aware of during the day, but it's kind of bedded into our psyche from, the beginning of lockdown. And so journaling can sometimes be a nice way to express, offload those emotions. And if you can take time in your day to kind of reflect on things that you have to be grateful for, it doesn't have to be anything huge or dramatic. It could just be, a fabulous community like Muswell Hill. It could be, just having food in the fridge, just things that we're grateful for, and be kind to yourself. Remember that we're all experiencing a very unusual set of circumstances that will hopefully disappear before too long. But of course, if you're very stressed or if you're very depressed even, then please do reach out, talk to someone, talk to a professional, and I'm sure there are lots of resources that Muswell Hill Shaw can help direct you to. So sleep is a really good way to de-stress, but at the moment it may be disrupted because we're just at home all the time, we may be anxious, our routine is very out of kilter. But actually, it's only when lack of sleep is consistent that it actually can suppress the immune system. So don't worry about the odd night that here or there that's not so bad. But if you have a continued pattern of insomnia, then just be aware it's something really to address, because it can weaken the immune system. It can also increase the likelihood of mental anxieties. But if you're someone who sleeps, we always say aim for about 7 or 8 hours a night. But if you're someone who maybe gets 4, 5 or 6 hours, as long as you're getting deep sleep, that has been proven to be far more beneficial than the quantity of sleep. It's about falling into a deep sleep, because that's when the body regenerates. That's when the brain cleans itself, so to speak. So if you keep your room temperature between 16 and 18 degrees, so a bit cooler than is comfortable sort of during waking hours, and make sure it's dark. You could use an eye mask for that, but also blackout blinds are great. I know Danny, my husband, his life has changed since discovering earplugs, and he's never had so much great sleep since he's discovered those. If you're sensitive to caffeine, then don't have any coffees, from lunchtime onwards. And similarly, wine and alcohol can interrupt sleep patterns, as can eating late at night. So try and give a 3-hour gap before bed. Avoid looking at your phone in bed. Avoid stressing yourself out with news updates or having to keep up with social media. It's not just the kind of emotions that those things might throw up, it's also the blue light that comes from these electronic devices interferes with our sleep hormones. So think about, if sleep is elusive to you, then think about a wind down process in the evening. Things like a warm bath, reading, listening to music, or even some of these guided meditations. There's a great app called Insight Timer, which is free and has a big number of guided meditations at all different lengths that you could try. And another tip as well is, even though we might not have to get up for work in the morning in the same way, try and keep your morning routine as consistent as you can to enable this, what we call circadian rhythm, a pattern of daytime and nighttime that allows the body proper release of the right hormones so that we're sleepy at nighttime and awake in the daytime. And if you're napping, just keep it earlier in the afternoon, because that can also interfere with sleep in the evening. Getting plenty of fresh air, keeping the windows open if you're not able to get out, but fresh air and also exercise can help with a restful night's sleep. So the last kind of really big point that I want to make here is about vitamin D, and this is because of a lot of the research that's coming out now around COVID-19. So vitamin D is a vitamin that we don't get very readily from food. We do get small amounts from oily fish and from eggs, but our primary source of vitamin D is from the sunshine. And vitamin D can actually have an antiviral action in the body and is very anti-inflammatory. And what we're seeing is that there is a big number of people who are having worse outcomes with COVID-19, having very low vitamin D levels. Now, whether this is cause or effect isn't yet understood, but there are more studies going on, and there has even been a couple of studies to suggest that if we supplement with vitamin D, we can actually improve the outcomes of COVID-19 and reduce the severity of these respiratory tract infections. So try and get plenty of sunshine, and we're absolutely blessed at the moment with the most wonderful spring season turning into summer very quickly. So about 20 to 30 minutes in the sun before you put sun cream on will help top up your vitamin D levels, and you might want to take a vitamin D3 supplement. And it's important to buy D3, not D2. D3 is the active vitamin D supplement. So just to summarize, before I hand back to Stephen for questions, the top 10 tips for keeping healthy during lockdown. If you think about that rainbow, think about vibrant, colourful foods. Increase the whole foods and all those sources of fibre, increasing healthy fats as well that we get from fish, nuts and seeds, whilst cutting out the unhealthy fats, sugars, things that are pro-inflammatory. Drinking plenty of fluids, up to 2 litres a day, getting exercise and preferably some time outdoors and in the sunshine, and trying to be mindful and finding ways to manage stress and allocate time in the day to relax, as well as getting a good night's sleep and possibly taking a supplement of vitamin D3. Okay. And that's me. I think I've spoken for long enough. I'm going to hand back to Stephen and see if there are any questions.